S.P. Dinsmore, a Civil War veteran, teacher, farmer, fervent Freemason, and politically convicted populist. To many, this may seem like an ordinary yet very accomplished man. But those people do not know his story. Samuel Perry Dinsmore was the creator of the unique, slightly unnerving sculptural plot in rural Lucas, Kansas. Our journey through the unique story of Samuel Dinsmore starts in the plains of Ohio.
But anyway, Mr. Dinsmore, he started this when he was in his late 60s. He was born in Coolville, Ohio in 1843. He went to a country school, self-educated himself pretty much. He read the Bible 3 times before he was 16 years old.
Dinsmore was born in Coolville, Ohio on March 8, 1843, to parents William and Laura Dinsmore. He spent most of his younger years in the green fields of Ohio until his peaceful childhood was drastically cut short by the start of the Civil War, where he became a regimental hospital nurse. Some of his nursing duties included assisting in amputations and watching his fellow soldiers and friends die. His experience was undoubtedly horrible and definitely contributed to his views for his future political campaign.
He wanted to be an apprentice of law, but due to the lack of money and a lack of time, he got out of country school and got a certificate to teach school. He taught school X number of years, not very long. And then he moved to Coolville. He was born in Coolville, Ohio. Then he done all kinds of things there, taught school, and eventually went to Grafton, Illinois. And he taught some school there, and this is where he met his first wife.
On August 24, 1870, Dinsmore married Frances Barlow Journey, who herself had 4 children under the age of 10. After the marriage, Dinsmore continued to farm on his formerly widowed wife's land for 18 years, until he unexpectedly decided to move to the small farming town of Lucas, Kansas. There had been many pamphlets and flyers about this rural Lucas, Kansas, claiming it to be a lush paradise perfect for farming, a metaphorical Garden of Eden. Dinsmore originally purchased a small farm on the eastern side of Lucas, but soon after, farming in Kansas was not all that it had been so greatly boasted about. By 1890, farmers were facing severe crop failure, and poverty was beginning to hit the plains hard. According to Cementing His Political Views by Suzanne Hassel Newcomb, the average debt of central Kansas farm property was 10% greater than its value. Through these hard times, it was hard for not only Dinsmore to cope with the idea of monopolies, but nearly all of the poverty-stricken people in the area were feeling the same. These feelings of animosity toward the government system and monopolies are reflected in his sculpturing. Within few years of his arrival to Lucas, S.P. Dinsmore had become active in the Populist Party, which he undoubtedly supported because of one of the populist goals of raising inflation so the farming community could pay back their debts. Dinsmore was the header of the People's Party in Lucas, and he ran for office under that conviction. He also was a big influence in political rallies and conventions pertaining to his party. Dinsmore was undeniably very passionate about his political views, and remained strong with them even though throughout the 1890s Russell County stayed very Republican. He was known to host several political rallies at his house, and was always promoting his political opinion, in hopes that his philosophy would rub off. In the 1892 elections, Dinsmore ran for political office as the township clerk, and much to the disappointment of the Populist Party, he lost. Dinsmore was vehemently against monopolies, and even referred to them as a deadly fungus. So during that same year, he also became responsible for founding the United Order of Anti-Monopolies. Unfortunately for Dinsmore's sake, the organization gradually dwindled until 1895, when it had virtually vanished. The year 1896 came about, and so did Dinsmore's first and last successful running for political office, when he was elected Justice of the Peace. In 1898, he then ran for the Kansas House of Representatives, and to his great dismay was defeated. At 56, Dinsmore decided to never run for office again, but he still actively followed the party he had shown so much devotion to. Throughout all of his years in Lucas, Dinsmore was active in campaigning for his populist beliefs.
The People's Party needs no Moses to lead them, or party fixers to fix them. Each true member is a leader and a fixer, standing shoulder to shoulder, side by side, not in front, nor will they be pushed to the rear, and will thus be found moving on, holding in check the strong, helping up the weak until equal opportunities to every child in the nation, and equal rights to every man and woman is given.
Dinsmore would spend most of his life proposing these ideas of equality and opportunity for all. In 1905, upon their retirement, Dinsmore and his wife moved into town. This was the beginning of what would be known as the Garden of Eden. His first, relatively unexciting experiment was a cement fence.
Around the mausoleum, and the front fence were put there because he said as he was building the rest of the place, people would sit on the fences and make fun of him. So when he built these fences, he made sure they couldn't sit on them.
But they were unaware of the extensive eccentricity that he had just begun. The fence was only the spark that had started his fire. His ideas then progressed to a log cabin made of limestone.
They did in Lucas, and Mr. Dinsmore was in his 60s. He was so intrigued with the post rock that he wanted to do something with it. So you examine the home that's down there. He wanted it to look like the native log cabins, but instead of using the native log cabin, he used the post rock. And they're mortise and dovetail on the corners like their everyday log cabins would be. And so he couldn't call it his log cabin home, but he could call it his cabin home. That's the reason for the name of his little book he's got.
In 1909, S.P. Dinsmore decided to try and sell his charming home, but received a lackluster response, so he continued his newfound hobby with cement. The first creative figure he made was a small face sitting on the ground, waving, and facing the window so that his wife would see it when she was looking out the window of the kitchen. He enjoyed this so much that he decided to again create human-like figures. Dinsmore then proceeded to create 8-foot-tall statues of Adam and Eve. Dinsmore was very active in his Freemasonry, so he included many symbols in his artwork, such as the symbols that Adam is wearing. To top off the Garden of Eden portion of his garden, Dinsmore created cement trees, and by 1915 that part of his yard was completed.
In building this statue, Mr. Dinsmore had a black man that lived on the premises out here. He slept, lived, and ate in a building outside. They didn't bring him out the same food they ate inside the house. So Mr. Dinsmore and a black man would have a piece of wire, rod, pipe, something halfway in place for reinforcing, and then the black man would send him up those buckets of cement, day after day after day. They mixed up and used 2,273 sacks of cement, all mixed by hand. This equals out well over 100 to 120 tons of ready-mixed cement a day.
This eccentric garden that the even more eccentric man had created was attracting much attention, especially from tourists. It is said that Dinsmore lured people off the train when it stopped in town, to have them come and look at his odd creation. He even went as far as putting a pipe up through the sculpture of the tree in life and death that connected with his basement, and from there he would speak up through the pipe so it would seem as if his sculptures were talking.
Here you will see where a pipe or a hose passes on. As the tube goes clear up through that tower, and there's a hole underneath that statue, faces out the other way. I'll point it out to get around there. When Mr. Dinsmore was alive, that hosier of pipe went around to this window. If you blundered into the Garden of Eden day or night and Mr. Dinsmore didn't think you'd ought to be here, he'd come over here and start talking. Of course, his voice would boom out up there. And he'd say, "This is God, you're in heaven." And it didn't take you long to leave the Garden of Eden when you hollered through that pipe.
In 1915, S.P. Dinsmore created a cement casket for himself, in which he would pose for the visitors to his peculiar dwelling. By March of 1917, the news of Dinsmore's creation had spread, and over 3,200 visitors were recorded stopping by his home. By this time, Dinsmore was making enough money from charging tourists to visit his sculptural masterpiece to support he and his wife, all the while creating more sculptures. To the townspeople, he had always seemed relatively wealthy in comparison. The oddity of his sculptured building was not wearing as well on the town as it originally had, and Dinsmore's reputation as a great man and genius was steadily declining. People were accusing him of